You want to give it another minute or two, Jessica?
Yeah, we'll give it another minute. We've got some people climbing on
Yeah.
now. If I can stop clicking the button. All right, we're going to give it just another minute, and then when we'll get started, give everybody an opportunity to get on. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Jessica Gilbert. I'm the Director of Community Affairs for Kids Central. We are doing our Sumter County Educational Forum, and we have with us our Education Liaison, Debbie Winters, and our Prevention Coordinator, Michelle Mongaluzzo, so we can answer as many questions as we can. We do ask that you hold those questions until the end so we can go through kind of what the county has set out for their plan. Again, this is a very fluid situation, so we are giving you the latest information that we have, and we are here to hopefully guide you and answer some questions that you potentially could have. I'm going to let Deb take over and walk us through the PowerPoint presentation. So Deb, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. So welcome, everyone. This is, as Jessica said, our forum for Sumter County. And we are doing our best to keep up with changes as they do happen daily, sometimes several times a day. So the information that we're presenting right now, I just caution folks that things could change in a moment's notice. If you get updates directly through your child's school in Sumter County, whether that's through Remind or School Messenger or any of the forums that the district uses, count on them to be the most up-to-date than the information that we're going to be talking about today. Before talking about what Sumter County's options are, just wanted to kind of do a rundown of the distance learning experience and talk a little bit about that. So I'm sure if we asked folks, you're going to get a lot of variation in terms of how they felt about that distance learning experience. We need to keep in mind that this was not a planned method for providing instruction in a remote or virtual way. And when the districts first implemented the distance learning, I mean, remember that time back in, it was around spring break. Sumter's spring break was a little different than the other districts. So I think you had the couple of weeks tacked on to the end and thought it was going to be for a couple of weeks. And, there were paper packets for the elementary school kids and whatnot. Then it expanded, and next thing you know, the kids are home for a month. And then before we knew it, it ended up being the remainder of the year. Districts kind of had to adapt to that and modify, because the plan that they made for a couple of weeks certainly was not necessarily the best option for learning when things started to expand to the full year. And depending on the district, they found themselves using different types of tools and platforms and resources. You know, elementary school kids were doing this, middle school kids were doing that. So they were pulling together their resources as well as they could, but on the fly, if you will. So, you know, also the other thing, this wasn't a parent choice. I mean, as we talk about the options that Sumter Schools is providing for the reopening of schools, this is a choice. So the distance learning was not. So, you know, you guys didn't sign up to be teachers and have these kids at home and support their education in that manner. The majority of students did engage in distance learning. Some maybe minimally, not as much as they should have. And then there was a population in every district where the students did not engage at all. Some of that may have been behavioral in nature, not choosing not to, but under other circumstances, some students in counties just simply could not even access it based on not having sufficient electronic devices or reliable internet connection, or maybe even any internet connection at all. And because of that, it became necessary for districts to do the best they could to support students across the board and not ding, if you will, students that couldn't participate in distance learning and have it affect their grades. And because, you know, students kind of caught on to that for a while, you know, they might not have engaged as much, realizing that it may not necessarily change their grade. As I said, some students really struggled with it, but there were also students that really thrived in that environment. There were less distractions. They could focus. They could go back and review material or rewatch a video or you know, replay a lesson plan, and it really helped them with their style of learning. And not only did parents and students learn from the distance learning, but school districts gained a wealth of information. Some that they requested through formal surveys, some I'm sure were less informal methods of feedback by the stakeholders and parents in the community, but it helped them learn what worked and what didn't work and how to move forward with any kind of remote learning plan in the future. What Sumter County has created as far as their reopening plan is that obviously, at least at this time, and again, this is based on the most recent information, students can return to school full time. And right now, the school start date in Sumter is still August 10th. We've had a couple of school districts, the neighboring Hernando and Lake, made some changes today to theirs. I believe the Sumter School District meeting is tomorrow, the 21st, and they may end up changing the start date for returning to school full time. But right now, returning to school full time is an option. And then the other option that the district has created with response to this is the remote learning. Now, this is an option that you can select now in the selection process. Technically, that option is getting board approval tomorrow. So it's not official, although it is an option that parents can select. The deadline to select the option in Sumter County is the 23rd. So that's this week. So there's not a ton of time. And thank you. I see a question was put into the chat, and we'll get to that information towards the end when we talk about question and answers, okay? So with the returning to school, obviously some of the biggest concerns are the safety protocols and measures that school districts might be taking. There is an extensive document on the Sumter County webpage. And if we can go to the next slide, Jess, just sorry. Okay. And what I've done here is highlight some of those things. This is by no means an exhaustive list or measures. It's just a few of the highlights, and in particular, some things that the Sumter district might be doing that others are not. I think, this is the fifth county that we've done. And I think if I could take bits and pieces with each one of them and feel like it was, the near perfect plan, because there's some things that some districts are doing that I wish all would. So with the brick and mortar school, they're looking for families to commit to 9 weeks. And what this means is they're not wanting families to, okay, I'll try brick and mortar, and if after 2 or 3 weeks I'm uncomfortable with it or don't want it, I want to change. So you have to give your plans some careful forethought. And again, recognizing that things could change, but based on the information that you have available now. So some of the measures that pretty much all districts are going to be taking is increasing the signage and teacher lessons, particularly for the little guys, about hand washing frequently and practicing good hygiene. They'll be making sure that hand sanitizers available across the campus and on buses. They will be encouraging students to wear face coverings on campus. Sumter is requiring right now face coverings on the bus. And if a parent refuses to have their child wear the mask, or the student refuses, then the parent is going to be asked to provide the transportation to and from school. On the buses, the high touch areas will get cleaned between the bus runs, and every bus will get disinfected thoroughly at the end of each day. Throughout the campus, there will be increased cleaning protocols. They are going to be using one way, kind of like when you go to Publix and the arrow on the ground says go down this aisle, and of course there's always people going the other way. But on the campuses, they're going to be creating a one-way movement and flow for the student traffic. Some of the other things that they're doing for safety, and some things are easier to do in an elementary school because students tend to be in that single class together. So it's a little easier to isolate a group of students, so that in elementary, they will do that as much as possible, spending time in the classroom, the cafeteria, the media, so that they're not interacting with students from other classes to the greatest extent possible. In middle and high, each school, because the campuses are, are different, they'll be doing their school-based plan to help discourage large gatherings of students. We know that the hallways, the courtyards, those kind of common areas that kids hang out in, to discourage the hanging out part of that. Reducing the number of students in the cafeteria, the media center, the gyms. In the cafeteria, to the extent that they can, they'll be doing social distancing. Once a student is seated, then that's where they need to sit. They'll be opening up outdoor seating options based on availability and, of course, the weather. They'll be using, in some circumstances, grab-and-go breakfast carts so that students don't have to gather in cafeterias, at least at the breakfast time. So those are just a few of the things related to the on-campus safety measures. In looking at what they are doing for their remote learning plan, which is called TEAMSVMTER, it too requires a 9-week commitment to that learning option. And the current plan, 9 weeks would get us through till about the mid-October. Again, based on the current schedule and grading periods. The current plan that the district has is that by the second semester, students would be returning to their brick and mortar schools. So it's their current plan that this is only something for the first semester option. And it's designed for families who want to maintain their connection to their home school. So if you go to Wildwood Middle or High School, that you would still remain a student at that school and you would receive your instruction remotely. This learning option requires access to the internet, and the district is going to what they call their one-on-one plan. This year, they're going to ensure that every student in the district has a I believe they use a laptop format in Sumter County. They're going to make sure that every child has a computer. So you would have a district issued computer, or you can use your own. Students would sign in daily and attend school remotely, following the standard schedule and bell times. So what we can expect is the students will be literally, participating in class, but physically being at home. Whether that will be in partnership with, the teacher who's teaching English 1 first period, whether they will have a mixture of kids face-to-face or kids remotely is all going to depend on the number of families that choose each particular option. So it may be that everybody is in the face-to-face class, and then the group that are doing it remotely are in their own different class with a different teacher. But again, this is somewhat like the distance learning, but obviously this has been tremendously ramped up following the school schedule and the bell times. I mean, the experience that I think most of us had with the distance learning was the kids kind of got to it when they got to it, as long as they got it done. But there's going to be an expectation you're following the schedule and bell time. They'll be taking attendance every day. In the high school and middle school, they'll be taking attendance period by period. So there will be very specific structure to this. As far as things like class meetings, there will be additional supports for students and families to access. And then their assigned teacher you would contact during the regular school day hours every day of the week. So the other piece for the middle and high school, or sorry, I'll start with the elementary, is that they will have live interactions via video. And, it may not be, it may be, just once during the day, whereas the middle high are going to have that, you can expect that for every academic period. So if class starts at 7:45, they need to be logged on in there. As I mentioned before, the attendance will be taken for each period for the secondary students, so that's middle and high school, and every day on a daily basis for elementary school students. I think I already mentioned about the access to tutorials and other tech support. So again, this is really a supportive remote learning environment. In many cases, families probably felt like they were just, flying by the seat of their pants and troubleshooting and trying to find assistance as needed. This is going to be a very organized manner of providing that remote learning experience. Again, some of the students experience some challenges, so some tips and strategies. The district will be, providing links and supports for that, because it's not the easiest thing to do. And I think it's really important to know that with the remote learning and when we do talk about the other option for a virtual experience, this format is going to still, even though there's a teacher teaching classes, this requires a significant amount of self-discipline on a youth's part, and that may have been a little different with the distance learning. The other thing about this remote learning, and this may or may affect some students, is that certainly they will be providing all of the core courses. And this is more so when you think about the high school students, all of the required courses, and there certainly will be electives, but they may not be offering the same array of courses as far as electives in the remote environment as they might be offering in the brick and mortar setting. All right, so the other option, which is not an option created because of the current pandemic situation, but districts are wanting to sort of remind parents Every school district in Florida operates their own virtual school. It's required under statute that every school district have one. Some districts are franchisees of the Florida virtual school courses. Some of them use other state-approved virtual instruction providers, and then some others operate their own virtual school program and courses. It's a parental choice that's been available in Florida for many years. And some students do their entire kindergarten through 12th grade education through a virtual school, whether that is a district virtual school or the Florida virtual school. Again, this is an option that has been in place. One of the things about the virtual school experience is that's the whole design of that program. The intention is providing learning outside of the classroom. So staff are specially hired and trained to provide that. Whereas in the distance learning and even with the remote learning option, there may be teachers who are in that position and having to teach classes remotely, but it may not be something that they are quite as in tune with as the virtual school teachers are. The next slide, Jess. Okay, sorry, there it is. So the virtual school in Sumter County they're looking for a semester-long commitment. And notice that this is a little different because the others they're talking about 9 weeks, because the other is meant to easily adjust from one to the other. You're linked to your school. It's just a matter of, are you going to be doing it on campus or remotely, and switch at the 9-week period. With the virtual school, they're looking at a semester-long commitment, if not the entire year, at least through the semester, so roughly until the winter break. And virtual schools are really designed for students who want to have more control over their learning experience and the pace, and when a daily, a flexible schedule is really important. Some students participate in virtual school, it may be they have their own medical issues and need to have some flexibility in their day. They may be involved in youth sports and travel. They may be involved in the acting field. So it's an option, again, that has been available. It does require an adult who can partner with the teachers, because the adult in the home is really the learning coach for that student, especially at the elementary level. So to choose this option is not that level of teacher-based support like Sumter is providing in their remote learning option. Students can often work on their assignments during the non-traditional hours. They maintain contact with their teachers using a variety of other web-based, whether it's sessions, emails, phone calls with teachers, and so on. It definitely requires a student who is independent, proactive, and willing to learn on their own. There are, all the courses are accredited. There are academic advisors attached to the virtual school to assist with college planning and that sort of thing. It does require that it is your own personal device. The district is not providing devices for this option. So if a student was given a device through the distance learning and opts to do virtual school, that device needs to get back to the school. And students graduate with a standard high school diploma from virtual schools. All right, so thank you. So I know we have some questions in the chat box, and we'll get to those as well. So some of the questions that have come up, and I need to see if I can, hang on, I just got to switch my screen view because my pictures are, no, not requesting remote, no. Sorry, my view just has all your beautiful faces covering my question and answers here. So the one of the questions is whether, we know that students struggled during the distance learning. A lot of questions have come up as to what supports will be available to students who did struggle or even possibly regressed when school was closed. And what Sumter County is going to be doing is all students will get their initial assessment in English language arts and math at the start of the school year to determine where they are at in terms of their diagnostic assessment. And then students that demonstrate that there has been a regression since they were last assessed, they'll determine where those gaps are and provide instruction to identify those needs. Any students that were already receiving tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, and those would have been interventions that were provided for students who were struggling. That's done through the MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support process. And so students might have been, tier 2, a student might have been pulled out within the classroom to do small group reading. And then if at a tier 3, that might be actually leaving the classroom and working with a reading coach or other curriculum specialists, just as an example. Tier 2 being less restrictive and less intense than tier 3 interventions. And so students who were receiving those would continue to receive those at the same intensity that they were at the time that the school closures took place. Can the TEAMSVMTER option be selected now? And the answer to that is yes, although it is not technically being voted on as an option until tomorrow's board meeting. It is an option that you can select on the intent to return form that is available right now. Oops, and I should have proofed. Oh, yes, if there are any changes that take place, for instance, let's just say the board decided they weren't going to be doing it and doing something different, any families that had chosen that option will be notified of what those changes might be. Okay. So a lot of the times, we might want to have kids attending the brick and mortar school, but there might be circumstances in a family situation that for health and safety reasons just are something that you're not comfortable with. So in this case, the question is that I'm uncomfortable with my grandchild returning to school due to my medical condition, but we do not have internet here. So what can I do? And the district is going to be purchasing additional hotspot devices and is going to try and help with other accommodations to make sure that students without internet access have reasonable alternatives to participate in remote learning. They don't want that to be a reason why a family automatically defaulted to returning to school if it's not something that they are comfortable with. So they will be addressing that for families that do not have internet service. And if conditions do get worse, certainly the districts are going to be taking guidance from whatever local health authorities or state guidelines. If there become a reason for either increased social distancing or partial school closures, they'll be modifying their TEAMSVMTER remote learning plan. And again, this is just based on the most recent plan. What they would look at doing is having students spend 2 days a week on campus and then 3 days a week at home for practice, independent study, and group projects. So those are just a few of the questions and answers that have come up. There is, again, there's a lot of information on the district website, and I'm sure as parents and caregivers, you've received communication from the district as far as how things are going. So next steps are to review, this is my advice to caregivers, if you haven't already, to review what is available on the district website. And again, that will be the place that updates are posted, as well as the Skyward Messenger remind the robocalls that the schools do. As far as any changes that do need to be made. You need to complete that intent to return form. The way the Sumter site is set up is they've got a column for each of the options. Below that option description is a tab. It doesn't matter which column you're in, the tab goes to the same form. So if you're under home, the virtual school and you want to return to brick and mortar, it's the same form. They just put it in the 3 places below each option. Need to make sure that you're submitting a response for each child in your home. This is not a household decision. This is a child by child decision. So they need to have that for each child. Remember that the deadline for making your choice is July 23rd, which is Thursday, I believe it is. And if you have not completed that intent form, the registration is going to default, if you will, to returning to the traditional school site or brick and mortar. Okay, so we do have a few questions. There's a question about a child with a 504 plan. So just the way that is framed, it says the child has a 504 plan, failed and offered summer school, but failed that as well. So a 504 plan, and without knowing the details, and it's kind of hard for us to get into child specific details, but a 504 plan is not an academic plan. It is not designed to provide any type of academic supports for a child. What a 504 plan does do is provide accommodations that an individual who has a medical or mental impairment might need to help level the playing field so that they are not discriminated against in their education setting. It's the same Section 504 that applies to us in our workplaces. So the 504 plan would provide accommodations. So those are going to be things like maybe extra time. They might be, that tests and quizzes are read to them, questions and answers. It might be that they have preferential seating, depending on what the 504 plan is for, because this is about a limitation that substantially impacts a major life activity. So it could be walking, talking, breathing, sitting, standing, focusing, thinking. So that is the 504 plan is not going to facilitate anything along the lines of promotion or retention. So it's important to make sure that the 504 plan is being implemented. And in some cases in the virtual learning environment, it's possible to provide accommodations at a greater level even than it might be in the classroom setting. Because there are technology devices that make those accommodations almost easier to provide. So that would be the question, is making sure that that child is getting the accommodations. And depending on the grade level that a child is in, presumably 3rd grade, which is the major year, although we did not have FSAs, there may still been criteria by which a student did not meet promotion criteria. And presumably the summer school program was an opportunity to gain that information. Okay. Hopefully that kind of answered the question. Thank you, Jessica, for putting the Sumter Schools website up there. Okay. All right. So let's see. The computer, if the child breaks the school computer, who is responsible for the computer? So I think this is, there's a few questions in here. Well, actually, a lot of question marks I can see in this one. So hang on, let me just go
I'm
through.
sorry. I had a lot of questions.
That's okay. That's okay. So the whoever signed the responsibility form, and I'm sure every district's form probably looked a little bit different. As far, and I know some of the districts, and I can't speak to Sumter specifically, offered insurance plans for that situation. But whoever it was that signed for the computer that has taken responsibility for that computer. Let's see, kids with OD, yep, I can understand that the kids with behavior problems, I'm assuming that meant as far as the choice. And it's true, a lot of kids who might have, whether it's a formal diagnosis or services, who might be, you know, faced with behavior problems in school. Some kids are just dying to get back to the classroom in school and be with their peers and friends. But again, these are decisions that need to be made. I do want to reinforce, and I know that the timeline is in a few days, but it's really important that caregivers, whether they're foster parents, relatives, non-relatives, that we're engaging the parents throughout this decision making. If you are a caregiver who has direct communication with the child's parents, I would certainly encourage that because parents may have some very specific thoughts as to what they would like their child to do. Ultimately, of course, we know that this is a health and safety issue, and you know the reasons that a caregiver might not want to have a child in a brick and mortar school because of the health and safety of individuals in their home certainly needs to be taken into account. So to answer the question, yes, all of the options are available to children in foster care, but we want to the greatest extent possible for that to be a collaborative decision. You know, engage the case manager, the guardian ad litem, so that everyone knows what the expectations are. And that's why we wanted to have these meetings, is to make sure that folks do know what the expectations are, and that the options moving forward are going to look very different than the distance learning is. And therefore, some youth who may have done well in distance learning may not do well in the remote environment or in the virtual school, because it will be a much more rigorous format than was previously provided. So the question about the kindergartner. So let me just, and I'm just going to speak generally because we, again, can't get into child-specific issues in this forum. But the way Florida law is written is students can start kindergarten when they turn 5 years old. As long as they've turned 5 by September 1st, they're eligible to start kindergarten. It is not necessary or a requirement. Florida's compulsory age for attendance starts at age 6. So if we have a child who is 5 but does not, and I don't have the statute right in front of me, I think I know it's in February, I just don't know if it's February 1st or some odd date in February. As long as a child does not turn 6 before February, a parent or relative caregiver, whoever that is, can defer entry to kindergarten until that following fall when the student is 6. If a student turns 6 after that February mark, they would be expected to start kindergarten this fall when they are 5. Okay.
Deborah, can I add something to that?
Sure.
So on that point, I think is very important, especially if the child is in a relative and or even foster care situation, that you make sure to include and discuss it with all parties. And if there are any objections to that, I think it's going to be something that needs to be discussed with the court. I just don't want us to be in a position where we make that decision, the parents were not necessarily, especially if the child's rights have not been terminated.
Exactly.
Because parents do have a right to have some input. And then going back to the computer, the first question you had about if the computer gets, broken or destroyed or something like that, there is a process for restitution if it's a foster home, and I see it says if all the options are available to foster parents, there is a restitution process to provide reimbursement. If it is school property, we do also have especially if there's documentation that support that this is something that the child did, to look at, some type of way of making sure that it's not something that the foster parents will be held liable for.
Okay, thank you for that, Shalonda. I would not have known what the internal workings on that. Maybe along the same lines, if you don't mind, there's a question about if schools did close again, what supports Kids Central is going to provide to foster parents, such as a tutor or sitters, if possible.
Yeah, and this is something that when the schools shut down previously, we were able, and we were in a financial position that we were able to provide. I think it was a little more than $100 a month per child for the months of March and April. I'm not certain, if that's something we're going to be able to do going forward, but given whatever happens when school does start back up, it's something that we always look to see whatever we can do to try to support the foster parents. I'm not sure if it will be through we did allow some foster parents to utilize their respite days in order to get reimbursement for tutoring and stuff like that, instead of actually paying a respite provider. We let them use those respite funds to pay a babysitter. Tutoring is something that I know that we have offered tutoring in the past, but it's something on a case-by-case basis. Again, knowing that Michelle and Deb, they're the ones that will be, they review and approve all those tutoring requests. But we definitely want to, make sure we're not able to provide tutoring in every case. But if you find yourself in a situation when this rolls out, I would suggest that you have a conversation with your case manager. And also, if you're not getting what you need through the case manager, you do have the option of reaching out to through your licensing specialist. They can also help you follow up. But Deb, will be providing before we end her email address for any additional follow-up. But we always do what we can. I can't guarantee that we're going to be able to provide financial support again, but we definitely will do anything we can if we know about the situation to troubleshoot and help as any way we can. When the need exists.
Right. And I think just to sort of, reiterate too, I mean, in the Sumter plan, their remote learning, should schools have to close partially or altogether again, the services are going to look very different than they did previously. So there will be a great deal of structure as I said, they'll revert to that TEAMSVMTER model for remote learning. So students would still have, if they did have to close the school and the child is at home, they're going to be, again, participating remotely, live interaction, live feeds, that sort of thing. So it will be very different in terms of both the instruction and the supports available to students. So another question is talking about new placements. So, and will there be staffings? So what, again, the distance learning, you know, when we first started this, and we, to start with, you know, anytime there is a placement change that changes a child's school zone, we hold an ESSA staffing. So in the springtime, when the distance learning first hit, it was kind of, okay, this is just a temporary thing. If they change, you know, that's one thing. And then it became to the point where it was for the remainder of the school year. And the best means for providing continuity was to remain on the learning platform and with the teachers that the student had been accustomed to having. And that is what took place in most situations. In some situations, it was necessary to change. You know, especially, you know, we've got with the younger ones or students that have disabilities, if they're doing a particular online curriculum, say in Hernando, and then they move to Sumter, although they might still be a fourth grader, the tools and everything that they were doing in the new county was different than what they were doing in their previous school system. So, and teachers would not know that child. So it was difficult for a new teacher to take in a child remotely and know what expectations, whether this was consistent with the kind of quality or work that the child had, whether they had struggles academically. It was just best to maintain that continuity in their previous district at that time. Moving forward, we're going to, and you know, this is going to be, you know, we're going to be learning as we go with this. But yes, when new placements come in, we would still be doing the ESSA staffing, and we're going to have to be talking about what that child did. So I'll just use Citrus County, for instance. Citrus County is the one county out of our 5 that is the only option is to go back to your school or disenroll from your school and enroll full-time in Citrus Virtual. They don't have a remote option. In Lake County, they are doing one of the models they are doing, again, return to your school full-time, disenroll and go to the virtual school full-time, or their third option is kids go to school 5 days a week, but only for a half day to do language arts or reading and math. And they do everything else virtually. So, and districts across the state are all doing variations of different programming. So as students move from one district to another, it's going to be important that we have that discussion as to what it is that they have been doing, because, you know, whether that is going to translate to what's available in the new county is going to be unknown at this time. So it will be something that we'll have to look at and kind of figure out. You know, we have received some, I don't want to say assurance because it's not necessarily a guarantee, but like all the districts are basically saying, you know, if whatever you choose, this is the, you know, here's the deadline thing after that, you won't have the choice. Certainly, and I know Sumter, we have a great partnership with the student services there. They've been very supportive of our foster care population. So I'm sure the same thing will be true for them, in that they would consider, you know, there might be a compelling reason, a new placement, for example, if a family has chosen to do a remote learning environment and this new child comes in and it's after the deadline, the opportunity for that child to then engage in the remote learning environment. I'm sure, again, any extenuating circumstances or compelling reasons can be addressed. I do not know the answer with regard to the Sunshine Health Grant as to whether it covers tutoring or not. I know I've heard that thrown around. I've heard questions about master trust. All kinds of things come up about the tutoring issue, but I do not know about the Sunshine Health
I
Grant.
mean, and the Sunshine Health Grant is only, I think it's what, $150 a year. So it's not a lot. So I don't know that even if it would be something that would be able to cover it for a long enough period of time. I've never heard it being used for the tutoring, but and like I said, unless they're talking about something else, it's only $150. So which is not going to be enough to cover tutoring for an extended period of time. But again, I know depending on the specific circumstances, and it would be best if you have something specific on a case specific issue to email us, and Deb's going to provide you with her email for to follow up on any education specific questions on your specific case, and we can look at it. But I don't think the Sunshine Grant will be a good use of it.
I agree, Shalonda. I don't think that covers tutoring either. I don't think that was on the list of items.
Somebody put it takes so long to get it. It does. It's a lengthy process. To get the funds sent back. So, and Deb did put her email address in the chat. So make sure to take note of that. If you have some, more specific questions regarding your individual case, or you want a little bit more information for her to look into, and maybe even follow up directly with someone at the school, she can do that.
Okay, and I'm going to say it verbally as well, because I know some folks are with us only by audio. So my email is Deborah, DEBORAH, .winters, WINTERS, @kidscentralinc.org. Okay. I think that's covered all the questions that popped up in the chat, at least to the everyone group. Jessica, I don't know if as a host you got any privately or not.
I did not. You got them all this time.
Okay. Okay. All right. If there last chance for questions. And again, we just have to keep in mind that this is as Jessica said, this is a very fluid situation for all of us. I mean, we're, literally, I wake up in the morning and make sure that my PowerPoint still makes sense compared to what, changes might have taken place in a, we went to bed last night and Hernando County was starting on the 10th, and they had a board meeting today, and now they're not starting until the 31st. So we may expect some of our other districts to start following suit. Most of our districts have a board meeting. I think 3 of them have their meeting this week, Lake, Sumter, and Hernando. And I believe Marion is having a special board meeting next week, which I think will probably be to address their reopening plans and start for school. Lake, the question is, when is Lake starting? And
Sharon let me know today it's the 17th, right, Sharon?
They just pushed it back to the 24th. It just came across my WESH newsfeed.
Lake,
okay.
Lake
Wow.
Hey, the information is coming in faster and faster.
It was going to be presented to the board to push it to the 17th. That was the plan going into the board meeting, but apparently that has, that's what the board is there for, and they're working off of the information that is best provided, through local authorities and the state as well. So Lake is the 24th, did you say? Is that what I heard Sharon say?
No, Sharon said the 17th, but Jessica said it just came across on the news feed, the 24th.
I'm trying to find exactly, but it was West too. Just I was scrolling through while y'all were talking, and they pushed it to the 24th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
See,
But
and those are the kind of
all of
things.
our calls. So we've been pushing
Right.
back and pushing back. So it's not
Mhm.
unexpected. Just
Right.
waiting for the word to come from the district.
And those are the things, that again, when we do have the staffings, we might have kids who in some parts of the state, went ahead with a early August start date, and other districts might have pushed it and aren't starting till after Labor Day. And what that's going to mean in terms of a child's learning if they've already missed the first 3 weeks of school, whether that's a face-to-face or a remote. But all we can do is what we can do with the information that we got at that time, and do the best that we can to make it as smooth a transition for our youth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we are trying to keep all of our out-of-home care, as well as our prevention team and family intervention folks up to date with this information, so that everyone is aware of what's going on with it, and we will continue to try and communicate that, of course, to our foster parents should there be significant changes along the way. All right, and no other questions from anyone? All right, going once, going twice. All right. Well, we thank you all for participating and bearing with all of these changes. You asked some great questions. Some may not always have the simplest of answers, but know that we will do what we can to try and find answers and continue to support you and the youth that you serve.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night.